Good afternoon. It's 27th of January 2015, coming up to 1 PM. Bit of a touchy subject today, but very important. Today is classed as Holocaust Memorial Day. The time we remember all the people primarily that were killed in the Second World War, Nazi concentration camps, etc. I want to start off by reading something. It's by Pastor Niemöller. Sorry about pronunciations, a lot of them German names. But Pastor Niemöller. It's quite a famous piece. It starts off with, "First they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, for I was not a Jew. Then they came for the communists, but I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. And then they came for the trade unionists, but I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." That's what it was like. As says, we remember mainly the people who died in the Holocaust, and primarily the Jewish nation. There was nearly 6 million, over 6 million Jewish people killed. But the Germans were quite clever here. They basically dehumanized this process. There's a documentary that I'm going to come onto in a second called Shoah, Shoah. And in part of it, they came across a document written by this I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, the German High Command, where they dehumanized the population by talking about them as being product, cargo. The actual killing, they talk about being processors. Process the cargo. We must improve the processing of the product. All of you see me using this? That's product. Somebody's made it, sold it. That's product. The liquid inside. Got a cup of coffee. Product. So it's all part of this dehumanization, to make all these people that were exterminated seem inhuman. That says there were over 6 million Jewish people killed. And that's who we mainly remember, seeing the documentaries and stuff like that. But there was also quite a few other people. I was quite interested. Approximately 5,000 to 15,000 homosexuals. Basically got rid of because they were abnormal. 10,000 Jehovah's Witnesses. Because basically they didn't believe the same way as the Nazi parties. 275,000 disabled people. Majority of these were the mentally handicapped. Basically, they did not want them to dilute the Aryan blood. They did not want impurities to go into the Aryan race. It may seem a bit of a contradiction, but they were a lot more gentler and humane to the disabled than to the rest of them. They committed acts of euthanasia, basically lethal injections. Still murder, but it was a lot more humane death than the concentration camps. 1.5 million Romani gypsies. Basically, again, because they were classed as being subhuman. Non-Europeans. What do I mean by non-Europeans? People from ethnic origins. Because like a lot of countries, they had people from probably Asia, probably some people from Africa, the Indian continents. Again, they didn't want them to dilute the pure Aryan race, so they were got rid of. It's quite an interesting footnote reading about that, because prisoners of war, if they were not of the Caucasian line, they were basically transported to hard labour camps where they died, where the Caucasian males were basically looked after better. They were respected as being officers and prisoners of war. The non-European, the people of different colour, they were subhumans. You must remember, the Nazi Party thought they eventually were going to rule the world. So they weren't bothered about killing officers, soldiers of a different ethnicity. Nah. It does actually, there was one of the survivors, Eli Wiesel, who did say, "For the dead and the living, we must bear witness." What does that mean in 2015? Unfortunately, a lot of the witnesses and a lot of the survivors have now passed on. I mean, we're talking 1945, so that's 65, 70, 80 years ago now. No, 70 years ago. 70 years ago. I do apologise, 70 years ago. So a lot of the people have passed on. It is up to my generation and to basically remember this. Because we, obviously through documentaries and stuff like that, plus also interviewing people, have heard this firsthand. It's the generation after me and the generation after them that's going to basically just see it as part of history. And there are people out there, and I can't get my head around this, there are people out there that do believe that it didn't happen. It was filmed by Hollywood to make the Nazis look worse than they were. To them people I say, look at the documentation. The Germans were very good in this, they kept very good records. Plus also, look at the documentation, documentaries. I did just mention a documentary called Shoah. A very harrowing documentary. Very unnerving to watch. Not because they show the footage of the concentration camps, not because they show the footage of the dead bodies stacked high, not because they show the bodies in the crematoria. Actually, it shows none of that. What the gentleman does, and I think his name was Claude Lanzmann, he talks to people. He talks to the survivors. There's a couple of clips. It's split into two halves. It's a 9-hour documentary. It takes a lot of watching. It's split into two halves. Phase 1, Phase 2. Phase 1 deals from the decision to set up, to basically get rid of the Jews and stuff, through the first trials, be it through gassing by carbon monoxide, up until the decision's made that we need a more effective way of processing the product. The second half is from the start of the concentration camps right up to the liberation. I think it's in the second half. They're interviewing this barber, and he's a survivor, and he stood there, bloke's hair. But while he's doing this, he's talking about the concentration camps. You know, to see somebody in a normal activity, it's his job, he's a barber, it's normal activity. But then talking about something that happened like 30, 40 years earlier, about all the bodies that died, all the bodies he saw shoved into the crematoria. It's quite harrowing. In the first half, they talked to a gentleman who goes back to the village, this village that he lived in, where they set up one of the first transportations to kill people through the carbon monoxide poisoning. And he worked in the crematoria. I think the place was called Chelmno, Chelmno. Quite harrowing listening to him talk. The Germans taught him to sing their praises. It was a song that the Germans made up, like when the Germans come marching down the roads, the girls lean out the window and shout the praises and love. And he was taught to sing this because he had a very nice voice. But this is a guy it's a young child who's got chains across his legs, manacled, and is working in the crematoria, in the woods, burning the bodies. So they talk to the survivors. Then they talk to the perpetrators. Some of the soldiers that were guards, some of the collaborators from the Polish, etc. community who helped out. A lot of them were secret filmings because they didn't want to appear on tape, but he secretly filmed them. And then the most disturbing part is when they talked to the people that just stood about, the witnesses. In this village of Chelmno, they were interviewed, and people went, yeah, we knew what was happening to the Jews, yeah, but got nothing to do with us. There was one bloke that said, yeah, I was glad to see the Jews go because there were swindlers and cheats. And when they said, well, what do you mean there were swindlers and cheats? Well, they charged us too much for what they were selling. In today's world, if that was the criteria for sending people off to concentration camps, how many bosses of these multinational companies would be sent to a concentration camp? How many people would be sent to the death? How many shops overcharge? How many governments overcharge? I mean, you know, I'm an ex-smoker now. I say quite plainly, I didn't pack up smoking because of health reasons. I packed up smoking because of the cost. A lot of that cost, a pack of cigarettes, is tax. In other countries, cigarettes are half the price. But yeah, it's quite a harrowing documentary. It starts by a simple idea. We want to be the dominant race. Then they go through the logistics. And then they start the method. In Germany, they started off by burning books. And it was Heinrich Heine said, where they burn books, at the end, they will also burn people. And that's what happened. They started burning books, started blaming a race for all the troubles. Then when they ended up, when all the books were burnt, then they started burning the people. I've forget who said it. It says, if we forget the history, we are doomed to repeat it. And yes, we do repeat it. How do we repeat it? By ignorance. Also by inaction. In modern times, we've had Rwanda. We've had Pol Pot's and the killing fields of Cambodia. In Russia, the Serbian gulags, where a lot of the political, religious people were sent to basically die. In Bosnia and Serbia there, when the conflicts blew up, I forget if it was Bosnians that were trying to wipe out the Serbians or the Serbians that were trying to... Does it really matter who was trying to wipe out who? History is always good to repeat this. There's always going to be one race, one nation think they're better than anybody else. It's never ever going to end. Which is a shame. Probably will never ever get to the extent of the Holocaust, the first Holocaust. But then it's up to us to speak out against it, to press our governments to act against it. So I just wanted to do a bit of a piece because I think it is important. Like I says, the generation that I am in are witnesses because we've heard all the testimonies. We've seen people being interviewed on TV, live TV and stuff like that. And it's up to us to bear witness to the next generation. And then it's up to them to say, well, generation before me heard this and it's true, so it's up to them to pass it on to their generation. In the end, we can never have that sort of destruction again. Well, I think in the end they talked about something like 10 million plus people were murdered on the whim of one nation's desire to be world leaders. Thanks very much. Speak again soon.